It's certainly a pleasure to have the opportunity to keynote the World Blockchain Summit, especially here, because today, in the world of blockchain, all roads lead to Dubai, clearly the emerging blockchain capital of the world. And as we saw in Wessam Luta's very impressive presentation, not only is Dubai already a city of the future, but it is accelerating even faster into the future. As a technology futurist for the past 30 years, I've learned the importance of heeding the words of that great American philosopher and Hall of Fame baseball player, Yogi Berra, who is as famous for his quotes as he was for his baseball, one of which is very relevant. Making predictions is very hard, especially about the future. And as someone who's been making predictions about the future for many years, I have to admit they haven't always been well accepted. For example, about 20 years ago, I was speaking to a group of manufacturing executives about this emerging technology called the World Wide Web. And to demonstrate it, I logged on to Amazon.com, ordered a copy of my most recent book, and had it shipped to the president of the Trade Association. And at the end of the demonstration said, "So what do you think?" One of the executives raised his hand and he said, "Jack, that was absolutely fascinating, but help me understand, what has this got to do with us? We're manufacturers. We don't sell books." A little bit later, I was speaking, I think it might have been the same year, at a technology conference. And I described a scenario of the new future of this emerging business practice called e-commerce. After my presentation, a fellow came up and collared me and said, "Jack," he said, "I like your optimism and your enthusiasm about the future, but there's obviously a few things you don't understand about technology." And I said, "Well, by all means, please enlighten me." And he said, "Well, we don't really even have the processing power. We may never have the bandwidth, and we'll surely never have the security. So this crazy notion you're peddling that someday people are going to sit at their computers and do their banking electronically online will never happen. It simply can't be done." Well, whether you choose not to believe my predictions because you don't think they apply to your business, or because you simply don't think they're technologically possible, nevertheless, I'm going to take a chance and go out on a limb today and make a few predictions. So please, join me on a short trip to the near future. In our first scene, a preteen needs orthodontic work. But she and her parents don't just go to the nearest orthodontist or one a friend or relative recommends. Instead, they post an online request for proposals that can only be seen by nearby registered orthodontists and receive several such proposals, each of which states the qualifications of the orthodontist and a recommended treatment plan. After speaking to a couple of the orthodontists by phone, they select one to meet with in person. Once they've reviewed the treatment plan and payment schedule with the orthodontist, they authorize it electronically via digital signatures on their flexible smartphones. The family's healthcare insurance makes progress payments directly deposited into the orthodontist's account immediately upon completion of each visit. The family makes their co-payments using airline frequent flyer miles. And at no point is any paperwork required in the entire process. In our second scene, an aircraft is halfway across the ocean when it detects that a critical part must be replaced on arrival. The airline's advanced procurement system scans the internet to identify Civil Aviation Authority approved providers of that required part. The system then negotiates pricing, terms, and conditions, selects a provider, and incorporates those terms into a legally enforceable online smart contract, on completion of which the part's design is then downloaded to a 3D printer at the airport, and the part is waiting at the gate when the aircraft arrives. In our third scene, a young couple is buying a new home. Perhaps Wessam Luta's son that he referred to. They first solicit offers from qualified mortgage providers by authorizing them to securely review their online credit histories. Each mortgage provider responds with an approval for a specified purchase price range. The couple then visits houses via virtual reality and selects one they'll go to see in person. On their way to the house, they request a title search to be done and ask each mortgage provider to please provide a mortgage plan for this specific property. On arrival, they're delighted that the house is just as nice as they had hoped. They agree on a purchase price with the seller. Select a mortgage plan. Since the title search has been completed by this time, they close the deal on the spot, again, via digital signatures on their smartphones. No paperwork, no brokers, no attorneys. And in fact, no keys are even exchanged, because the house and all its systems are now controlled via their own biometrics, fingerprints, voice prints, retinal scans. What will make all of these phenomenal innovations possible? Well, certainly a number of technologies come into play. 3D printing, virtual reality, biometrics. But there is one technology that runs through all of these examples. And many have already recognized that this technology is the most significant to emerge since the internet itself. This technology doesn't just enable improvements in specific areas, it facilitates the digital transformation of entire business and social ecosystems. Healthcare, transportation, manufacturing, financial services, real estate are just a few of the many potential applications of this technology across every industry, including yours. And while this technology has been around for nearly a decade now, most people around the world, most executive decision makers, have only really started to hear about it in the past year or two. It's called blockchain technology. And no less prestigious a publication than The Economist magazine has stated that blockchain is quite simply the most important advance in record keeping since the invention of the double entry bookkeeping system in Florence, Italy in 1494, over 500 years ago. When I had the privilege of keynoting at the Global Blockchain Week conference in London earlier this year, I pointed out that wherever people, processes, businesses, governments, or the social good requires proof of identity, ownership, transactions, or commitments, blockchain technologies promise to meet those needs with a degree of trust and integrity never before possible. Now, how does blockchain do this? Blockchain technologies do four key things that we've not been able to do nearly so well and together previously. First, they provide a permanent, immutable, signed and time-stamped record of identity, ownership, transactions, or commitments. Secondly, that record can then be shared among two or more entities, people, businesses, other organizations, what have you, without any one of the entities in that ecosystem having to depend on any one of the others or having to pay a third-party intermediary to facilitate the sharing of that information. Third, the information can be made globally available to all of the authorized participants with complete transparency for everyone authorized to see it and the authority to update that information for that subset of those who are authorized to do so. At the same time, it provides unhackable security against those unauthorized to update that information or even see it. Now, as soon as I use the word unhackable, lots of people say, well, given enough time and resources, any computer can be hacked. And that's why blockchain data is not stored on any computer. It's stored on many computers. Depending on the implementation of blockchain, identical copies of the blockchain data are stored on anywhere from dozens to hundreds to thousands of computers all over the internet. Every time a new record is added to the blockchain, that information is synchronized to all of those computers within minutes, if not seconds, depending again on the nature of the implementation. The world's most advanced cryptographic and synchronization technologies are used to ensure that all of those copies of the blockchain remain identical to every other copy. Now, the very first implementation of blockchain technology is the digital currency of Bitcoin. But it's very important that you and those you go back to educate when you get back to your offices understand that Bitcoin and blockchain are very different. Blockchain is the underlying enabling technology. Bitcoin is simply one of thousands of potential applications of blockchain technology. But because of the advanced security capabilities of blockchain technology, the Bitcoin blockchain now has been operating for more than 8 years. Hundreds of billions of dollars of transactions have taken place on the Bitcoin blockchain. And despite the concerted efforts of the world's most cunning digital criminals, the Bitcoin blockchain has never been hacked. Now, how is that possible? It's because in order to hack a blockchain, it's not sufficient to be able to hack into one of those computers or nodes and change or delete data as you choose to. You would have to hack into a majority of the hundreds or thousands of nodes on a particular blockchain. And you'd have all over the world, and you'd have to hack into them all simultaneously. And you'd have to complete that process within the 10 minutes or less that it takes before those blockchains synchronize and your efforts to illicitly change that information have all gone for naught. One physicist has estimated that the amount of energy required to drive the amount of computing power that would be necessary to simultaneously hack a majority of the nodes on, for example, the 7,000 nodes on the Bitcoin blockchain is approximately, and get that job done within 10 minutes before it synchronizes again, is approximately equal to the amount of energy emitted during that same period of time by the sun. So, is it theoretically, mathematically impossible to hack a blockchain? No, of course not. But it is economically impossible. It would take the dedicated resources of a major nation state to even make a half-hearted attempt to hack a blockchain. And that's why the Bitcoin blockchain has never been hacked. And that's why blockchain technologies give us a degree of security in sharing information that has never been available to us previously. Well, when people realized what this meant and that this could be used for digital currencies, they began to also realize it could be used for a lot of other things, such as electronic medical records, 3D printing design files, or real estate land titles. One more key thing that can be put on the blockchain are smart contracts. Now, this is more than just a digital version of a traditional contract created on a word processing system. Smart contracts are dynamic contracts that can be self-enforcing. It's a computer program running on a blockchain that can take custody over assets on that blockchain, track what has happened to date, and respond to incoming information or events, such as the airline has completed the execution of a smart contract and is therefore authorized to download the design file for a part. Or the orthodontist visit has been successfully completed and therefore the orthodontist is to be transferred the appropriate payment for the services rendered at that particular time without any human intervention being required in the process. It's already producing extraordinary results. I had the privilege not quite a year ago to speak at the Global Big Data Forum in Qingdao, a major port on the northeast coast of China. By an extraordinary coincidence, on the weekend before my presentation, a ship arrived in the port of Qingdao carrying a load of cotton being sold from a company in Houston, Texas, to a company in China. Now, in international trade today, typically processing the paperwork and information necessary to transfer ownership in that kind of situation from seller to buyer and get the seller paid and also to pay the freight carrier for their transportation services takes about 10 days. In this particular case, because all of the relevant information was stored on the blockchain, as soon as they were able to scan the barcodes on the pallets containing that cotton and verify that they had arrived, they were able to complete the entire process and pay both the seller and the transportation carrier in 10 minutes. Think about the implications of that from a working capital management perspective in international trade. Another key concept behind blockchain technologies is the notion of self-sovereign digital identity. By tying together our own unique biometric information, along with other key information like passport numbers, driver's license numbers, national identification numbers, and those kinds of things, we can uniquely identify a particular individual and tie them to the unique information that is associated with them and them only. What this will do is to help protect against identity theft. Also to confirm professional credentials so that only those people who are certified orthodontists will be allowed to see a particular information. Help ensure efficient execution of government services so that all of those people who are authorized to receive those services can receive them quickly and easily, and will allow governments, businesses, and other organizations to know exactly who their customers are and who their suppliers are while they do business. But digital identity is not just about people. It's also about things, such as in the Internet of Things. Now, 2 years ago in 2015, the number of things connected to the Internet exceeded the number of people at about 5 billion. Now it's approximately double the number of people. By the end of the next decade, it's expected that while some 7 billion of the then anticipated 8 billion population of the Earth will be connected to the Internet, that we are likely to have as many as 1 trillion things connected to the Internet. And in fact, again, as Wessam Luta referred to, just 2 days ago, Sheikh Mohammed signed an agreement here in Dubai to ensure that Dubai takes advantage of the Internet of Things technology to be able to protect Dubai's digital wealth. A very important step forward and one that should be applauded. But at the same time, it raises an important question, which I was glad to hear Wessam Luta address. And the question is this: when you've got information coming from millions or billions or eventually a trillion or more things, and you are making decisions and taking actions based on that information, in many cases automated decisions or actions, how do you know that the information that claims to be from a particular thing is in fact from that thing and wasn't hacked or spoofed by someone trying to misidentify the system? Or even if you are able to confirm the source of the information, how do you know that that information hasn't been inadvertently or accidentally changed, or perhaps even intentionally changed in the meantime by a bad actor with bad intent? In order to know that, you would have to have a means of uniquely identifying that information digitally and storing that information in a permanent, immutable record. In other words, blockchain technology. Tying together the Internet of Things and blockchain enhances the value of both. As a simple example showing how this has already been done, back at the first of the year, the German technology company Bosch worked with TÜV to come up with a mechanism for tracking odometer readings on automobiles by continuously uploading those readings to the blockchain. At any point in time, the owner of the car can use an app to check and see what their odometer reading is at the moment. But even more importantly, when it comes time to sell the car, if the owner or perhaps the reseller of the car decides, I'm going to try to make this car appear to be more valuable by digitally setting back the odometer, it won't do them any good, because we've got a permanent, immutable record of what the actual mileage was as of the last time that car was driven. And in fact, blockchain technology is even beginning to be addressed for purposes of voting.
The time has come to bring voting into the 21st century. Let's be honest, no one likes searching for their polling place, waiting in long lines when they arrive. And when the ballots are cast, can we even be sure they get counted correctly? We can do better. And at Follow My Vote, we figured out just how to do it. We threw out all preconceived notions about the way voting is done today and imagined how it should be done tomorrow. It was immediately clear that an honest election needs to be verified from end to end, so there was no choice but to bring it online. Leveraging blockchain technology in combination with elliptic curve cryptography, we've broken open the ballot box to allow everyone to count the votes, all without compromising privacy or security. Instead of waiting in line, imagine voting from the comfort of your own home on your own device, and even following your vote into the ballot box to confirm that it was cast as intended and counted as cast. Online voting. You want it, you got it. Finally, online voting. Follow my vote. Pass it on.
And this is just one of several initiatives underway to support online voting in a number of jurisdictions around the world. Now, probably the biggest objection to online voting is going to come from those politicians who are going to insist that it's not a valid way because they don't want to lose their ability that if they lost the election to claim because it was a fraudulent voting. Or even in the case of some politicians who won the election to claim that there was fraudulent voting. In the area of healthcare, with patient-mediated health data exchange, we'll be able to provide accountability, transparency, privacy, security, control, and provenance. Who had the authority to and did update information about a particular patient, all under the control of patient consent management, so that we won't have to be going in and filling out the same forms every time we see a doctor, or waiting days or weeks for information be transferred from one doctor or clinic or healthcare organization to another. But again, these are just a few of the industries. Here is a very partial list of a couple of dozen industries that will be very significantly impacted by blockchain. And if your industry is not on this list, it's only because I ran out of space, not because it's not going to be impacted by blockchain. And many of these industries already have industry consortia in place, actively developing strategic plans for using blockchain to reshape how these industries work. These consortia have come up with hundreds of use cases, just a tiny fraction of which are shown on this slide. And you're welcome to take photos, and also if you want to follow up with me afterwards, I'll be sure you get a copy of these slides for you to be able to refer to more easily. But moving on, some of you may be asking the question, well, what about meta businesses? And some of you may be asking the question, what is a meta business? Well, a meta business is a business whose business is to help other businesses better manage their business. Got it? Okay, so what we're talking about are businesses like accounting and auditing and attorneys and advertising and financiers and so forth. And blockchain is going to change those significantly too. If you look at accounting and auditing, for example, now trading partners, customers and sellers, will be able to maintain a shared record of all the transactions giving rise to accounting entries. Therefore, we will have a single undeniable record, not only that the trading partners can agree upon to resolve any discrepancies or disputes that might arise, but also that you can allow read-only access to authorized third parties like regulators, tax authorities, banks, courts, auditors, and so forth to go in and read that information and know exactly what is transpiring according to their authority to see that information, audit that information, or regulate those kinds of transactions. Now, what this means is that the green eye-shaded accountant of the past, painstakingly cross-footing debits and credits, is going to go the way of the horse and buggy. Does it mean that auditors are going to be out of a job? Absolutely not. There will always be jobs for human auditors, no matter how much automated technology is adopted. But those auditors who understand, monitor, and improve analytical and cognitive processes utilizing blockchain-based information are the ones that will thrive by adding value at the front end, helping organizations design their systems as effectively as possible. It's also going to impact law firms in 4 key ways. First of all, helping people just deal with the legal issues around their implementations of blockchain, know your customer and anti-money laundering in banking and financial services, or patient privacy protections in the healthcare field. But also, new business models are emerging. What happens to the real estate business when title search companies go away because the entire process can be automated? And what roles do the other players have? And how are the legal considerations in their doing business in that ecosystem going to change? Also, how contracts themselves are drafted and executed. As we move towards smart, self-executing contracts, it means attorneys are going to need to learn to think like and work with software coders, even though attorneys won't necessarily have to be able to write code themselves, although in a few cases where they can, and I already know some blockchain knowledgeable attorneys who are coders, and their services are in phenomenal demand right now. And you might ask, well, what about on the financial side of business? How is blockchain going to impact the issuance of stocks, bonds, and other financials? Again, here in Dubai, in the US, in the state of Delaware, where many organizations are financially headquartered for various regulatory reasons, in Switzerland, and many other countries and jurisdictions around the world. Work is actively underway to facilitate the trading of these kinds of financial instruments via blockchain, so that you can move from the traditional T+3 days time to settle financial trades to near real time, settling in a matter of minutes, if not seconds. And even more exciting is the emergence of initial coin offerings. Using crowdfunding and blockchain technology itself to raise money to facilitate the growth of not only new blockchain companies, but other emerging companies in technology and in fact even outside of technology. You'll hear much more about this here at this conference over the next couple of days. But just this year, by the end of the second quarter, the total amount of money raised via ICOs had exceeded the total amount of money for the year raised via traditional venture capital, and most of that raised via ICOs at that point in time was raised just in the month of June. Since that time, in the last 4 months, we have seen an acceleration in the number of ICOs and amounts of money being raised, now in excess of $2 billion that has been raised, almost all of which has been raised in less than the last 4 months. So, lots of interesting things going on with blockchain. Exciting things even. And yet, none of this matters unless you have a strategy for your business, for your organization, for blockchain transformation. Blockchain plays a critical role in digital transformation. Most emerging technologies, AI, 3D printing, augmented reality, Internet of Things, are point solutions, and by that I mean they apply at specific business processes within a given organization, or even at a specific geographical location. Blockchain is different. Blockchain provides the decentralized infrastructural glue that ties all of those points together. And what that means is that it enables the digital transformation of not just individual processes or organizations, but entire businesses, indeed, entire governmental, business, or social ecosystems. We can rethink the way everything works together. But even blockchain transformation is not about force-fitting these new technologies, even one as powerful as blockchain, into your existing business processes and infrastructure. You start by understanding that blockchain is a team sport. The benefits come when you coordinate with the others in your ecosystem or ecosystems to work together to use blockchain to take cost, errors, delays, time out of your overall processes, rethinking your business, governmental, or social ecosystems. Then you, as an individual company, NGO, healthcare provider, governmental agency, what have you, need to rethink what your business model is. How do you add value today, and how will that change in the blockchain-enabled ecosystem of the world, of the future, and how will you need to change your business processes and indeed your business model to take full advantage of how you can add the most value for your organization, and then use any and all technologies, blockchain and others, to implement that new vision. Now, when we work with clients to help them develop their blockchain transformation strategy, we recommend planning and executing the strategy with 3 parallel components. 1, having a long-term vision of how the blockchain-enabled digital ecosystem will work, and a long-term vision of the blockchain-enabled digital enterprise, business, governmental agency, what have you. Secondly, looking at your existing business processes and determining how they're going to evolve. Some of them will go away entirely. And so you don't need to invest a lot of time and money into enhancing those. Many will still be around, even if in radically digitally transformed ways, and consequently, that's how you're going to want to think about how those are going to change to move toward your 3rd horizon vision. And then the 2nd horizon is doing the testing, the proofs of concept, working with a new technology, whether it's blockchain, Internet of Things, AI, or what have you, and working with new business processes. with the idea of evolving those second horizon, near-term proofs of concept into live production as you evolve those parts of your current operations, first horizon planning, so that they merge together as you move out 2 to 3 to 5 years into your vision of the future. This is exactly what I believe, based on what I saw and heard today, is what the government of Dubai is doing as a part of their Dubai 2020 initiative to become the first government on the blockchain. It is certainly something that they need to incorporate into their planning process, and that you need to incorporate into your business or organization's planning process. But if they're going to be successful, and if you are going to be successful, you've got to overcome the most significant hurdles to blockchain adoption. And in a study done just recently by Cognizant, they identified the top hurdles to blockchain adoption, and what you will see are they include such things as understanding blockchain and use cases, communicating blockchain to key decision makers, senior level executives, estimating cost benefits of use cases, and so forth. Almost none of these have to do with technological implementation. They have to do with awareness and understanding on the part of senior executive decision makers as to the strategic implications of blockchain technology. People like Wessam Luta have that awareness, but it needs to be spread across government and across business in every organization. At the American Blockchain Council, that's our objective, and we've developed a series of recommendations that the key people who need to understand the strategic implications of blockchain technology include C-level executives and other senior executive business decision makers, such as accountants, auditors, attorneys, and senior IT management. Senior IT management understanding the business side of blockchain in addition to the IT technical side of blockchain. What do they need to know? Well, the key things that we recommend that they learn about are: what is blockchain technology? How does it work? Identity, security, smart contracts. Very importantly, how is this going to impact our industry? What opportunities are presented for our business? How do we develop our overall strategy for blockchain-enabled digital transformation? So if there are any of you that would like to get a copy of our recommendations on executive education for blockchain, please see me after the presentation or follow up with me via the contact information on the last slide. Now, I predict that the Dubai government will be successful in achieving becoming the first government on the blockchain. Does that mean every single last transaction that they do will be on the blockchain by 2020? Probably not, but I think they will have the vast majority of the major mission-critical applications in place within the next 3 years, because they recognize the need for managing change. And that's a real key here. Because if you think things have changed a lot in the past 10 years since the first smartphones were introduced, you ain't seen nothing yet. Driven by a host of emerging technologies, perhaps most importantly blockchain, we will see more change in our businesses, in our society, in our lives in the next 10 years than we've seen in the past 50 years. How are you going to address that change? It starts by changing your own mindset. You've got to think differently and be open to and actively soliciting of opportunities for change and improvement. But you've also got to change your corporate culture, your organizational culture. Your organization has to be looking for opportunities to change for the better. You have to change your business processes. You have to change your business model. You have to change your business ecosystem. That's a lot of change. But as the great historian Henry Steele Commager put it so well over a century ago, while change does not necessarily assure progress, progress implacably requires change. Join us in using blockchain technology as an enabler to change your organization, to change your industry, and to change the world. Thank you for listening. Thank you. Do we have any time for questions?
Let's take a couple of them. If any one of you have a question, please raise your hand. One moment. All right. I'll start with Dad.
Hello, Jack. Thank you so much. You know, I have a question about some of the challenges ahead, because even though the blockchain itself was not compromised in the DAO example, certainly you could say that there were some vulnerabilities within the code, and that called for some philosophical discussions on, is code law? And I'm wondering what other challenges you see before us now as we think about blockchain applications.
Well, as the previous speaker pointed out so well, we are still at very early days. So yes, there will be technological challenges, there will be legal challenges, and there'll be implementation challenges. And we could take a tremendous amount of time just to go through the list of what all those are. But I have not seen any of those where I'm convinced that in order to resolve those issues will require us to violate the fundamental laws of physics as we understand them. So I don't think that resolving those problems is something that is impossible. In some cases it will be difficult and require a significant amount of time and effort. In other cases it will be done relatively straightforward, as engineers have the time and resources to develop the appropriate tools and technologies. Probably the legal and governmental and social and regulatory and social side will take a little bit longer, but there are powerful economic and social incentives behind using blockchain technology to improve business and governmental and social ecosystems. And those incentives are so strong that what we're going to see is that the changes, the ability of blockchain-enabled technologies to accommodate what we would like to do over the next 2 to 3 to 5 to 10 years will actually evolve faster than almost any organization can hope to change its own business model, business processes, corporate culture in order to keep up with it. So for those people who are doing short-term proofs of concept, yes, they need to be aware of exactly those kinds of current technical, legal, and social constraints to make sure that they don't do something that's either a waste of time or that's counterproductive in some way. But in terms of developing an overall strategy and moving ahead with the education, awareness, and development and implementation of that strategy over time, companies, organizations can't get started too soon, because those problems will be addressed and fixed, especially as smart people keep raising them to the attention of the engineers and attorneys and accountants and government regulators that will need to focus on this. So thank you for that excellent question. Next. Yes, sir, the gentleman in the center there.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Jack. I was really interested about when you spoke about the digital identity. Something which is being applied in certain countries, suppose, UAE or Dubai had its own digital identity for those users. Would this provide kind of a trust with when we come to the cross borders? I mean, is it going to be a standardized protocol among all countries when we say that this digital identity is being used as with the blockchain? This would provide kind of confidence and trust among all. And my thinking is, when we speak today, one of the most hurdle things with all this fintech issues is about authenticity of the people, the KYC, which we call it, and knowing that the main guy who's doing these transactions and the beneficiary and all other related regulatory parts. And this is not being something today, commonly addressed. Somebody looks to it from different perceptions. Would you think that the blockchain would provide this standardized protocol worldwide?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question. And yes, I think that's clearly the direction that we need to move. You raise a very important point. And there's a couple of aspects to that. One is, where there are already well-established digital identities for individuals in various different jurisdictions, whether in Dubai or elsewhere, how do those cross-reference to other countries and other jurisdictions so that you have consistent digital identity? And again, there are a lot of smart people working exactly on how to do that. Most governments around the world agree on the importance of being able to resolve that issue for everything from combating terrorism to allowing for free trade and travel around the world. Secondly, in many third world countries, you not only don't have a digital identity, you don't even have any well-established paper identity for a lot of people. And so there are initiatives underway like the ID 2020 initiative under the auspices of the UN and the World Health Organization to try, as infants are being vaccinated, which most infants around the world are within their first few months, to also capture identity information on the blockchain for those people. Now that's obviously going to be a generational process. It's going to take 5, 10, 15, 20 years to get to the point where the vast majority of the couple of billion people in the world that are not really part of the broader global economic and financial systems that, of which identity, ultimately digital identity, is important, are all caught up with it. But as a longer-term strategic capability, I think absolutely blockchain is the tool that can make this a practical thing for us to do, and therefore there are a lot of smart people working on resolving that.
Hello,
Yes.
my name is Lara Abdul Malak from Iqtisad wal Amal Group.
Yes, it's nice to meet you finally,
nice
Lara.
to meet you too. It was a great presentation. Thank
Thank you.
you. I just wanted to raise quickly, because I know we're late, just 2 quick questions. First of all, on the issue of security, I just wanted to say that there could be issues of security if 51% of the nodes were hacked, and with quantum computing and so forth. And there's also this issue of nations having all the nodes in their country. So today there's a lot of discussion of if, for example, China, almost all the nodes were there, could they control the actual information on blockchain, not China. I mean, any other country, if all the nodes, or 51% of the nodes were present in a particular country. So that's one question, and if you can have and the second one is, so it's all great, blockchain is, we're moving forward, but there is always remaining the issue of which platform, which one will there be different platforms or one platform? How do you see that? I mean, how do you see, which platform, which one will move forward?
Okay, that's a very good point. So let me take your second question first in terms of the platform. I'm a big believer that as new technologies emerge, you tend to see both and rather than either or. So I don't think it's going to be a matter of, gosh, is it going to be Bitcoin or is it going to be Ethereum? Or is it going to be any of several others? And you're going to hear presentations here at this conference on other approaches that are being used. And certainly with many of the permission blockchains, they are taking unique approaches to which platform is going to be used. Everybody involved in developing each of the platforms that I'm aware of is actively looking at the issue of how do we integrate blockchain data across platforms. So I don't think we're going to find ourselves where we were back in the mid-1980s when all those people who bought beta VHS beta machines had to throw them away because VHS became the widely adopted standard. So I don't think that's going to be a problem. Now, it's a problem, it's an issue that needs to be addressed, and we need to move ahead to make it as easy as possible to do that. And that's why presentations like the one from the gentleman from Simple Token are an excellent example of one of the means of beginning to address exactly those kinds of issues. Now, the issue about the security of blockchain in particular, actually, it's not so much that a majority of the nodes of the Bitcoin blockchain, and we're just in this case talking about the Bitcoin blockchain, it's not so much that a majority of the nodes are in China, it's that those nodes that are in China have a majority of the compute power because they have huge warehouses full of computers, with hundreds or thousands of times as computing power, as in some cases some other nodes might just be a single PC that decided to join. So, in theory, people have speculated, well, what happens if the military takes over the government of China and the military decides to take over all those production? Could they hack the blockchain? Well, they could, theoretically, if they wanted to devote a substantial proportion of their resources, destroy the Bitcoin blockchain. And that would be a technological and economic setback. But that would not be something that would gain them any particular value other than sort of setting back everybody, including lots of people in China. So one has to question what would be the economic or political incentive to take a step like that. Secondly, we're also seeing, and this is part of the reason why we're seeing, again, increasing numbers of permission blockchains and increasing numbers of alternate consensus mechanisms that don't rely so much purely on computing power, but require on other ways of proof of consensus. And in some of our discussions later in this conference, you'll hear more discussion on some of those technical considerations. I think as blockchain becomes more, again, in 1996, one of the world's leading experts on telecommunications stood up in front of a major forum and said, I predict that before the year 2000, the internet will blow up and spectacularly collapse in failure and go away. Well, that never happened, obviously, but in part because as people invest more resources in emerging technologies, there's more incentive to ensure the security of those technologies, the reliability, the ability to respond to particular challenges, whether they're technological, economic, or what have you. I believe we'll see the same thing with blockchain, and that's why I think blockchain is going to be an indelible part of our future. I look forward to the opportunity to talk to many of you one-on-one later in the conference. Thank you so much. Thank you.